The report, titled Women's Rights in Review 30 Years After Beijing, where the now famed ideal that women's rights are human rights gained currency, shows that in 2024, nearly a quarter of governments worldwide reported a backlash on women's rights.
Fundamentally, what it shows us is that the good news story is that the world today is actually more equal for women and girls than ever before. And that tells us that progress is in fact possible. And yet the report will also show, with its data and evidence, that this progress has been too slow, too fragile, too uneven, and most importantly, that this progress is not guaranteed.
While progress has been made, including a rise in the proportion of women in parliament, a decline in maternal mortality, girls achieving parity with boys in upper secondary school, and the over 1,500 legal reforms to level the playing field for women and girls in 189 countries, major gaps still persist.
Still, 3/4 of parliamentarians are men. This means that laws and policies that don't reflect women's lives. Moreover, those women who do put themselves forward for political office often face unprecedented levels of violence and harassment, turbocharged by the misuse of digital technology. Maternal mortality is down, but still, millions of women die needlessly in pregnancy and childbirth. And the truth is, progress on this most preventable of problems has largely stalled since 2015. Though the world has reached parity in education overall, 60 million girls, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, are still not getting the opportunity to be in school, to finish school. And closely related to this is the fact that 1/5 of girls globally are still married as children.
The report lists 5 priorities to make faster gains and prepare for an uncertain future. First, closing the accountability gap by putting gender at the center of all policies and programs, elevating women's voices to achieve equal participation and influence in decision-making at all levels, closing the financing gap by making catalytic investments through national measures, including budgets aligned with gender equality, harnessing technology to close the digital gender divides by ensuring that women and girls lead the digital and artificial intelligence revolutions, and finally, shock-proof services and infrastructure to avoid sudden rollbacks on rights. In a world where there has been brazen pushback on issues of diversity, equity and inclusion in some of the most powerful countries of the world.
The fact that this pushback manifests itself in many different ways, but where it is based is in fact in very patriarchal, very traditional notions of who men and women are, of the dominant roles and frankly embedded stereotypes of what is to be expected of women and girls in their household, in societies, in the workplace, in the market, in community. And these notions are actually increasingly gaining public acceptance through political discourse and also through endorsements at the highest political level. And so consequently, the approach to address this pushback needs to be multifaceted. It needs to be evidence-based. It needs to meet that discourse where it is and rise above that. And that's why we don't say we are pushing back against the pushback, but rather we are pushing forward.
With calls to meet the moment not with apathy and despair, but with action and hope.
We also know the playbook quite well of how this is manifested. And therefore, I would say that women's rights movements are telling us that they are not intimidated, that they are even stronger than this pushback, that they are ready to push forward against the pushback. And that is why we say, let 2025 be the year where history says we stood our ground.
An engine room in need of a supercharge. International Women's Day marked on Saturday ahead of the opening of the 69th session of the Commission on the Status of Women, which kicks off here on Monday. The main focus of that session will be reviewing and appraising the implementation of the Beijing Platform of Action 3 decades on. needing renewed invigoration and momentum at a time when the patriarchal headwinds are extremely pronounced. Sherwin Bryceby's SABC News, New York.